You know, for something like 600 million of us, Spotify basically is music. It's the soundtrack for our commutes, our workouts, our entire lives. But behind that little green logo, there's been this 2-decade-long war raging over money, power, and what a song is even worth. In this explainer, we're going to peel back the playlist and get into the controversies that really define the world's biggest music streaming service. And that's a pretty wild statement, right? This is the idea at the very heart of our story. It suggests that Spotify's real genius wasn't just about the tech. It was about repackaging a huge problem into a multi-billion-dollar solution. But a solution for who exactly? That's the real question we're going to dig into. So to really understand Spotify, you have to rewind the clock. We've got to go back to the beginning, to the wild west of the early internet, when the music industry was in a state of just absolute chaos. I mean, remember the sound of a dial-up modem? And that thrill when a download finally finished on Napster or LimeWire? For us, it was a revolution. All the music you could want for free. But for the music industry, it was a complete apocalypse. They were losing billions, and nothing they did could stop it. The pirates were winning, plain and simple. Okay, so here's where Daniel Ek, Spotify's founder, had this key insight. He didn't ask, how do we sue the pirates? He asked, how do we build a better product than the pirates? The idea was simple, but honestly pretty radical. Make legal streaming so fast and so easy that downloading a sketchy MP3 just felt like a pain. And their secret weapon? A free ad-supported tier that made piracy feel slow and totally obsolete. So Spotify goes to the record labels and convinces them it can solve this massive piracy headache. But in doing that, it created a brand new problem. How in the world do artists get paid now? So let's follow the money, or in this case, the fractions of a penny. And this is where things get complicated. See, when you bought a CD back in the day, the artist got a fixed cut. Easy. But with streaming, it's not a sale. What Spotify does is it pulls all its subscription money together and then it pays out royalties based on an artist's slice of the total streaming pie. So an artist's paycheck doesn't just depend on their own streams, but on every single song streamed on the entire platform. So that $10 a month you pay, it doesn't go straight to the artists you listen to. No way. Spotify pays out around 70% of its revenue, but it goes to what are called rights holders. Now that means the record labels, publishers, and other folks who own the music. The actual artist, the person who wrote or performed the song, they get paid a smaller slice of that slice, all depending on their contract. So after all that, what does one single stream actually earn for the people who own the song? On average, it's about 0.3 of 1 cent. That's the number. That's what would eventually spark a rebellion. I mean, an artist would need over 1 million streams just to make a few $1,000s for their label. And that's before they even see a dime themselves. So as Spotify gets bigger and bigger, a lot of the world's most famous artists started looking at their royalty checks and thinking, wait a minute, this new system might not be working out for me. And that led to a very public and very loud backlash. And you had two of the biggest names in music just draw a line in the sand. Back in 2014, Taylor Swift pulled her entire catalog, calling Spotify this grand experiment that she just wasn't willing to be a part of. A year before that, Radiohead's Tom York did the same thing, arguing that the whole model just wasn't sustainable for new artists. He said flat out, make no mistake, new artists you discover on #Spotify will not get paid. And they were definitely not alone. A whole chorus of artists started speaking up. You had major bands like the Black Keys and Coldplay either criticizing the model or holding their music back. It's even led to groups like the Union of Musicians and Allied Workers, UMA, actively campaigning for a baseline payment of 1 cent per stream. But this fight wasn't just happening in interviews and on Twitter. It moved into the courtroom pretty fast. And there, the arguments weren't just about fairness anymore. They were about legality. And all of a sudden, we were talking about billions of dollars in alleged copyright infringement. This was a huge one. Wixen, a publisher for absolute legends like Tom Petty and Stevie Nicks, accused Spotify of this massive oversight. They basically claimed Spotify was streaming thousands of their songs without getting the right mechanical licenses, which are the permissions you need to, reproduce and distribute a song. The size of this lawsuit was just staggering. Wixen was asking for $1.6 billion with a B. Now, the case was eventually settled out of court, and we don't know for how much, but it exposed this fundamental weakness in how Spotify was doing business. It was a huge deal. And all of that brings us to the very latest front in this war. It's a battle that's happening right now, and it's all about something that seems totally unrelated: audiobooks. Yeah, it sounds weird, doesn't it? How could adding more stuff to your subscription possibly mean that songwriters get paid less? Well, the answer is buried in the fine print of copyright law, and it's at the center of a major new lawsuit. Okay, so the whole thing hinges on this specific legal definition: a bundled subscription offering. Copyright rules have this special category for a bundle. That's when a music subscription is sold together with another service, like audiobooks, that has, and this is the key phrase, more than token value. And if it's a bundle, the way royalties are calculated completely changes. So let me break down how this works. Before, the math for royalties was based on the total money coming in from a music-only subscription. Simple enough. But once Spotify added 15 hours of audiobooks to its premium plan, it reclassified the whole thing as a bundle. This lets them argue that a piece of your subscription fee is for audiobooks, which shrinks the total pot of money that music royalties get paid from. I mean, it is a classic tech industry move. Find some fine print in the regulations and restructure your service in a way that helps your bottom line. Now, Spotify's defense is pretty direct. They're basically saying the law is crystal clear. Their premium plan has music and another service, audiobooks, that definitely has value. So legally, it is a bundle. End of story. From their point of view, they're just playing by the rules as they're written. But the Mechanical Licensing Collective, the MLC, which represents songwriters, they completely disagree. They're suing Spotify. At first, they argued it wasn't a real bundle at all. Now, their argument has shifted a bit. They claim Spotify is deliberately overvaluing the audiobook part of the deal specifically to shrink the music revenue pool, and, as a result, underpay songwriters. And that case is still going on. So, after 2 decades of all this disruption, where does that leave us? Well, the story of Spotify is really a story about this fundamental tension, right? It's a battle between what's convenient for us, the listeners, and what's sustainable for the creators. I mean, you can trace the whole history. It was born out of the piracy era with Napster. Then you had the public rebellion from huge artists like Taylor Swift. Then came the massive lawsuits that set new legal precedents. And now, today, we're in this incredibly complex legal fight over audiobooks and bundles. The battle to define what Spotify owes the people who make the music has literally never stopped. And that really leaves us with this one big question. Did Spotify actually save the music industry from piracy by just giving us something better and easier to use? Or did it just replace an illegal system with a legal one that puts all the control in one place and funnels the value away from the very artists its entire platform is built on? The answer, it seems, is still being written.